is the second readings for ordinance 2/2020. That was the parking of motor vehicles on lawns prohibited, including rear yards. Anyone want to open any discussion on that?
Has anybody got any feedback on this?
In as much as doing homework, yes.
Pretty much, anybody called you or contacted you or emailed?
I've got no calls or
I have not either.
I was gonna say, I got one call, and she talked about how Reynoldsburg recently have done that, and she reached out to people in Reynoldsburg and they approved of it. That's all I got from. And then I reached out to some people, mixed reviews.
You know, most communities do have this, with the exception of two that I found. Worthington and New Albany, although they both have disclaimers on this. I think we really should think about this. We discussed it heavily 2.5 years ago, and nothing's really changed. I know we have a few problem areas, and I know the woods is one of them. But I don't think it's right to go after my friends, my constituents, my neighbors, because we have less than 2%, 1.5% maybe, that's not conforming. I mean, our code enforcement agency, our guys, they do a good job. And they have a lot on their plate, I know this. It's not uncommon for me not to speak to them at least once a week. It's Tuesday and I've spoken with them, and TJ just got back. I've spoken with those two and the director so far this week. So I just don't think it's right that we do this to everybody. We have things on the books right now for our code that we should enforce that.
What, that you can't park on grass?
In the back, on the grass. I'm not talking about the front and the side that this was
So if
introduced.
somebody can't, if they're parking in the back, in the yard, you want everyone not to be able to park on their grass in the backyard, is that correct?
I'll be point blank, I've got no problem with what goes on in somebody's backyard. And, you know, somebody made the statement to me, well, you don't know what it's like. I like that statement because that person can come to my backyard right now and look and see what. So it's really simple for me. No, I don't think it's right that we should tell somebody you can't park on your grass in the backyard. It's my personal opinion.
Well, and Wes, my feeling is the same as it was before. I'm so torn on this because part of me feels that if somebody came in my backyard, I'm going to be upset about it. I don't even like when the gas or electric, they need to come knock on my door, tell me who they are before I allow them to come into my backyard. So part of me feels like, no, I mean, it's such an invasion of privacy. But then the other part of me feels like if I had a neighbor that was trashing their backyard, I also would want to be looking over them. You know, I have a next door neighbor that works on cars. He's been told by his landlord that, you know, they just fixed the driveway. I don't want you doing this. And the landlord came to me and said, hey, if he's working on his car, I want you to call me. And I looked at him and I said, I won't. Again, it's such an invasion.
And I liked your second part that you said as well. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Answer. I'm going to go next.
I do like what you said about the second part. But you know, we have code issues in this city. And somebody else made the statement that people use our streets to go from one area to the other, Main Street to Broad Street. That's fine. Okay, somebody, and I'm not asking you to do this, but yes, I am asking you to go out and look at these streets. I'm going to give you an example. We have a new building going on over at Hamilton Road right now, right next to the Kroger's. If you go between Kroger's and Etna Street, Etna Road, along the apartments, you're gonna see some issues. This is a main street that people come in through our city, so we have other issues that we could take care of. And I'm not trying to pick on certain parts of the city, because I'm gonna tell you, everybody sitting here that votes, you can go 5 to 8 houses from where you live, and there's an issue, with the exception of where you live. And I was a little shocked, I must say. So anybody can go into the part of the city and find an issue. And just sit there and drive down the street and do the speed limit, and you can see. I happened to do it again today over on Robin. We're going to look at the next piece of legislation that we have coming up. I wanted to see where this place was at. And I saw issues over there too. And yes, I did see some big issues way back, and I was going very slow. So that's just my opinion. I knew we were going to discuss this again in 2 more weeks. Our director's not here, and we had a very long discussion yesterday. So,
Okay.
you.
All right, one of the jobs that we have is very difficult. That is speaking up and saying things for the betterment of the community. And it's not about one person, 2 people. It's, as you said, this was a 2-year-old issue. Apparently there's been no improvement. Therefore, it warrants that there needs to be some type of regulation put in place, because at the end of the day, we represent all 18,000 plus people, not just the people that are the perpetrators or the 100 people that they found that have issues with this. Now, in looking at all of the data and facts that were presented, well, first of all, let me say this. Their neighbors call enforcement. So do we then neglect the neighbors that are calling or dismiss what they're saying to rectify an issue that is happening with somebody else? No, we don't. We address that as well. And if they are out of enforcement, then our responsibilities as council members are to deal with that issue. It may not be, it's not easy. We do have to do some hard stuff sometimes, but at the end of the day, we have to do what's right for everybody, not just the 1 or 2 or 3 or 100 people. Now, if my neighbors, and I've had people stop me and say that there was a complaint somewhere, I have to deal with that issue. Whether I speak to those neighbors every day or not, I still have to address the issue that, I'm sorry, your trees are over the sign and nobody can see that. So you need to cut them, or otherwise enforcement is going to come, because they're going to call, because they have, and they're going to make you do that. If you don't do it, they'll assess a fee to you. I don't see, personally, if I'm out of compliance, I'm going to self-monitor myself, or I know that there are neighbors that will say something. As far as somebody walking in my yard or my backyard, perusing around to see what they can find wrong, they better not do that. That is out of line. That is not what we're discussing here. It's a matter of, are you in compliance or are you not in compliance? And does that affect the neighbors around you? And if it affects the neighbors around you, rectify your stuff. Otherwise, then the city will do it for you. It's not easy, but unfortunately, it's one of the jobs that we have. And if it makes enemies out of your neighbors, then are they your friends and your neighbors after all? But we look out after everybody, not just a few. And I mean, just to think about, people are working in their yard and car shops. What about the environment and the waste? What happens with all that stuff that they're putting into the ground? That's another issue. That's an EPA issue. And so I think the neighbors have a right to raise concern. It causes rodents. It causes all other issues as well. So in my opinion, you know what? I'm sure your neighbor said something to you about it. Not you particularly, right, but I'm talking about the person. I'm sure your neighbor said something to you about it, even jokingly or whatever. But they said something to you. Now enforcement has said something to you, but then you dismiss what enforcement is saying. So now we have to come back, and law is not for those that are agreement with law. Laws are for those that break the law, unfortunately. And so we have to represent everybody, not just a few people that we like, or our families, or our friends. And that's where the hard part of our job comes in. And so I agree, there does need to be something done, because as far as it attracting people or attracting unwelcome rodents, that's gonna be an issue with us. It just is, and,
We have laws on the books right now,
okay.
so take advantage of it and enforce them, do what you have to do.
But this is the thing, somebody's complaining. So do we negate the fact that somebody is complaining and say, well, take care of yourself? No.
So you enforce
So
it.
Wes, what I'm
Yeah.
hearing from you is that you want code enforcement, when they get complaints about cars parked on grass in the backyard, you want them to then go and cite those neighbors.
If they're in violation, yes.
To not have any type of parking on their grass at all, or any type of parking in the backyard, because right now, there is not, we were saying that, should there be parking or not? And if there should be, it shouldn't be on grass. So right now, we're saying you can't park on grass, really can't.
2002, they amended it to say you can't park on the front nor the side in grass. And let's be honest, if they would have did not use front or side and just put no parking on grass, we wouldn't be sitting here discussing it right now. I mean, that's quite obvious.
So
Well,
why-
then,
I don't
here's
want
part
to-
of the problem. I mean, you have to define parking.
You have junk cars that aren't,
That's really
moving,
not
they're
a question.
parking.
The point is, if somebody's parking a fully operable, licensed, tagged, insured vehicle for short periods of time in their backyard, that's one thing. But if people are storing dozens of vehicles, boats, campers, and this is happening all over the country, and this is why this is an issue, that's the big difference. So if somebody is responsible and creates an environment to park, we always have that avenue of BZBA, where you can apply for a variance. So everything's not a cookie cutter. You can't solve every issue with one piece of legislation. This at least is a beginning. And
But don't you agree that we have legislation on the books for our
they can't
code
enforce it.
enforcement officer?
They can't really enforce it.
They sure can.
That's exactly what they told us.
Yeah, they said
And I
that.
have to rely on those professional opinions to be true. However, I did read in some of this stuff, and I have some of it right here, police department can go into your backyard if they have probable cause. But that's different. Some municipalities break down who has authority, and that makes a difference. We're not going to that extreme. We're trying to keep it simple and solve a problem. I have empathy for guys who legitimately may collect cars, or may have a couple of parts cars that they're working on to build one good one. I side with those guys, and we'll try to figure out solutions for that. What I don't like are guys that are running a perpetual backyard that is a junkyard, and also against the law, a repair business out of a neighborhood garage.
I'm with you there.
Because the neighbors do complain, as Councilperson Elmore described. Most of the complaints, or the issues, I shouldn't say complaints, most of the issues, when I wrote to code enforcement, and we've all done it, most of the issues that they address aren't just stuff that they happen upon. There's a call that triggers a response.
Absolutely.
And you know what our guys don't do? They don't tell the folks that are addressing the issue with it, hey, your neighbor called.
That's right.
Correct.
They don't do that.
I know that.
They're very
I've
respectful.
been with them, I know that. I do.
So, yeah, and to your point, Lori, I agree with you 100%. It's a tough decision, but just like back when we had to protect personal property rights in another form, these are vehicles or, owned machinery or whatever, when we protected a person's personal property rights in the form of a K-9, that was a tough decision. But we did it, because I don't like the government telling people what they can do. Heck, a simple thing like telling a guy that owns a restaurant that you can no longer let people smoke in your restaurant. I don't think the government has any right to do that. If he wants to do that, then people that don't agree with going in there and being in the smoke, they just don't go there anymore. So yeah, Lori's right, it's a fine line, it's a tough decision, it's
Very tough.
uncomfortable. But the number one thing I heard out of somebody that actually stopped me out in front of my driveway, said, we have to be good stewards of the earth. You know, that's a much bigger picture than I was looking at it at first, and then I saw pictures that were brought in as exhibits by code enforcement, and you see 12 cars lined up along
Which
a
is,
tributary, a creek.
you're not allowed to do that in the city of Whitehall, such as.
There, it's there, it's there, it's there.
It's not, that they should be cited and pulled into mayor's court for that.
Okay, how you gonna do that?
Then how are you gonna cite them if there's not an ordinance?
But we have ordinances that says you
Not-
can't store junk in the back.
Okay,
What's junk? You
what,
can't
what is
define that.
considered junk?
Well, first off, if you have more than 6 vehicles that are titled and licensed to you, then you can't have that in the state law because you're considered a dealer.
No, that's
No,
not
no,
true.
that is not.
Sale of, sale of.
Sale of, yes.
That's,
Sale of.
so that's different. And also you have to remember that our code enforcement officers, when they get a tip, if they can't see it, they can't do anything about it.
Correct.
So, if the neighbors see it, that doesn't matter. Now, if the mayors, or if the neighbors give them physical evidence, such as pictures or something, that's a start.
Or you can let them.
But if they don't physically see it, they can't do anything about it. Now, if they can get, photographs or whatever, if the neighbors get photographs or whatever, then, that's definitely something. But the point is, if it's not against code, they can't do it. I mean, that's the point. And then you have these neighbors who are subject to these, trailers parked in the backyard, 10 trailers, really? Really? I mean, and some of them were just rotting out. Some of them, have been there for 15 years, and it's just rotting out. The cars are rusting, literally rusting out in the backyard. Why does the neighbors have to deal with that?
That neighbor shouldn't have to.
Exactly.
But if we pass this legislation, then you're going after other people that, it's just not right. That's my personal feeling, that's some of the feedback that I've received so far.
Well, and that's the
So,
hard
I mean,
thing.
we're gonna agree to disagree on
That's
this.
what makes it tough.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, we're not saying you can't.
And it's not a win-win
We're
situation.
not saying you can't,
It's-
the legislation's not saying you can't park that stuff there, you have to park it on an impervious surface. So if you wanna put 50 cars in your backyard, it's gotta be parked on concrete or blacktop. However, if you're over 7,500 square feet, there's restrictions. If you're under that, you can have 50% of your property could be blacktop.
Let me ask, the pictures that we saw this past week, the exhibits, where did those pictures come from? Did those come from code enforcement?
Google Earth.
Yes.
Yeah, code enforcement provides that.
Yeah, with.
From Google Earth?
Right.
Some of them was from neighbors.
And then some of them were from the auditor's website. Franklin
And some
County
of them
Auditor.
go back to 2016 and it's the same property, same
Right.
vehicles.
Yeah.
I looked at my old files and there were some of the same pictures.
Mhm.
Different date.
The
Same
hard
yard.
thing to me is, I know people in this city that do park things in their backyard on grass and are responsible. They keep it clean, they keep it neat, but they're functional, they're either boats or campers that they actually utilize in the times of year that they're available. But then you have people that are so irresponsible, could give a crap less about their neighbors or
You got
anybody
both.
else, that's got 15 or 20 vehicles, been sitting there for years, and the environmental issues and the critters coming out. I have people call me, well, I'm getting possums in my backyard, I'm getting raccoons in my backyard, their weeds are above what they should be, they just don't maintain, and you got oil leaking and antifreeze leaking.
I agree.
It's a shame that you can't have people that is respectful to the community and to their neighbors. But they refuse to be, it's proven they haven't been for years. So, a couple of years ago when this went over, there was just too much minute details in the ordinance that just really made it rough on everybody. This is plain and simple, my opinion. It's a shame that it has to be done.
Well, the problem is,
But-
just like you were saying, is there's the two different kind of people.
Right.
There's the ones that are parking their vehicles, maybe on grass, but
They maintain.
they maintain. And then there's the other ones. We go ahead and we pass this, you have to be consistent. So those ones that are not really doing anything wrong, those are the ones that are getting punished for this, and
Exactly.
this is why I'm having such a hard time with
When you have a
this.
truck and a trailer and a camper, these people are gonna get penalized when you have the guy 4 doors down that's got 6, 8, whatever in the
If
backyard.
they're in compliance, how are they penalized?
Well, because they'd have to pave their backyard. Why would I tell somebody to pave their backyard? Because they take care of their yard, they cut underneath during the season, and the guy down the street doesn't. So you can't cite this guy and not cite this guy, even though this guy and his wife and family are taking really good care of their property. But during the season, they're gonna put their camper, their truck, and their boat and trailer
So that's
in the
why all
backyard.
these municipalities across the
I've got a
country
huge
have
problem
come
with
to
that. I'm
this.
sorry.
That's why all these municipalities have come to this conclusion. But to your point, what I would like to see is a proper grace period to get in compliance. I would also like to see, because we have other programs where we help, you redo your roof and there's financial assistance. I'd like to explore
I just
the
think there's a
thought.
better way to do it. and I don't know
I
the way
would
do
like
it
to
yet.
explore the thought
Okay.
of,
I believe Zach mentioned something about
And I've said that.
can I finish my statement?
Yeah.
September,
I would like
October,
to-
somewhere in there,
I would like to
Zach said.
explore the notion of being able to also assist folks that come into compliance under this, because it's like a patio or some kind of landscape feature that we could also help pay for that.
Talked to a resident and they said, well, I'll just put in a 2x2 concrete stepping stone. And I said, unfortunately, I brought that up and you're not allowed to.
It's not impervious.
There's communities that do it, but then I'm not gonna compare our community.
There are
with
some,
them.
and a bunch have changed them already.
Just so you know.
Even down to a gravel pad, some have done that.
Okay. They're gonna.
I haven't had any people come to me to speak on either side, except for that has come to council. So it would be nice, I'm hoping that with 2 more readings, I'm hoping more people will come forward for and against, so I can kind of hear. And then maybe it would be nice next time, so maybe we could sit down and actually discuss and see if there's a way that we can go ahead and improve upon this. Something just seems to be lacking to me right now, and I'm unsure.
I'm not gonna tell Mr. and Mrs. Neighbor that it's really good care of their yard. And they do, they have a boat and a trailer and a camper in their backyard, and I'm gonna say, I'm sorry, you're gonna have to
In
pay
that situation
See,
you
look,
described, those vehicles, those machines are probably licensed, registered. They have
But they
insurance
fall
on
under
them,
the same thing,
and
Bob.
they use them. Yeah, but I'm saying, that's not the biggest problem. They'll comply. And those folks, I'd like for us to be able to contribute
How would they
25%
Apply.
by putting in a pad to park on. Or
There's no good way to fix it.
there's
but-
no perfect way.
No.
It can't be perfect.
But I don't know about the rest of you, but I do get multiple calls on this issue. People complaining with the animals, the smell, the vehicles that's been sitting there 5, 6, 7, 8 years, never moving, rusting away. And it's people that is absolutely irresponsible, like he said.
Yeah,
The
the support
people
for
that-
this is far outweighing.
I'm in the community a lot.
I feel bad about it.
I've been on council
Yeah.
for 8 years, never had one person ever say anything to me.
I do.
I have.
Can we see if Zach and code enforcement can come back next?
Sure, just
Yeah.
Yeah,
let
next
Council
committee meeting.
President Potter,
Just
Yeah.
because
Or
I
I
feel
will
like
tell
that
him
might
for
help
you.
hear more and we can maybe ask them more questions on
Right.
like how they plan to enforce it, or is there anything that?
Are there
And
any
and if you
exceptions?
guys have any ideas
One
of
thing
what
that-
you need to do to improve the legislation that's already here that kind of is a in-between, present that information as well. I mean,
I asked the couple of gentlemen last Tuesday to do that. If, if you have your viewpoints on this, at least demonstrate it with other legislation or put something in writing. Something that's tangible we can actually use to review, not just a verbal opinion.
I was asked, well, I had a conversation with Zach last Friday because I had someone ask me, in Ward 3, there are several areas that do not have paved driveways. Okay, they got gravel driveways. Well,
Right.
code covers that. If you have a gravel driveway, you can replace it or refresh it with gravel. But you can't have asphalt or concrete and go to gravel. So I said, how's that gonna affect the backyard? Are these people gonna have to pave their driveway, or if they park in
They
the
will
back,
not.
they will
would
not?
not.
That's the answer, but I wanted that clarified.
We had a
because people-
sharp
I had
individual
people in
call
my
me
area
and
that
said,
will affect.
ask that question, and
Yeah.
of course I told him exactly what we're discussing, and his response was, so right now, if I put a pad out there of gravel and park my car on it, will it be grandfathered?
No.
But it's brilliant thinking, because it's before it's happening.
Yeah.
As to make the gravel look dirty, like it's been there for a long time.
But everybody has different points of views and issues on it, but, you know, I agree, the last time this was presented, it was just too detailed and too difficult. This is simple. The longer we let it go, the worse it's gonna get, because people's gonna be aware of what's going on here with this legislation, and if it's not passed, the responsible people's gonna continue to be responsible, but the irresponsible people's just gonna expand. And that's just human nature.
And we're not beholden, if we need more time, if we speak next time, and we still need some more time, we
We
can
can
just take.
table it.
Maybe there's a better way they
There's,
can come
there's
up
no
with it.
rush.
Right.
Do you guys know when it didn't
Well,
pass
if you
last
know
time?
of anything.
I'm the mayor, I've said twice, I don't.
It's been a couple of years.
And I've been
I
looking,
just
and
kinda-
I've got
I wanted
things
to
back
pull it
here
just to see
from
what it looked like.
1963, 1965, 1971, 2002.
Julie
Well,
should
there's
able to
gotta
help
be
you.
a reason why almost every other community has things in place. Because they've gone through the same problems. And unfortunately, we have not been able to move forward on this issue.
Some of the legislation is so lengthy, you can't even read it and figure out what it is they're
It
trying
needs
to
to
say.
be-
Right.
It needs to not be
A
lengthy.
simple approach,
Just
and
and I did like it because of its simplicity and the fact that you could still park vehicles in your backyard. So I still liked it for that reason. And, you know, you can still get a lot of vehicles on a concrete and asphalt surface. Now, you can't do your whole yard that way, but you can still get a lot of vehicles.
I think
Mine
50% of a yard smaller than 7,500 square
It's a
feet
lot,
is
yeah.
extremely generous.
It is. My issue more or less is junk vehicles.
That's,
Right.
and that is the
Junk.
problem.
I don't
Will
disagree with you.
people, if they do this, will of the junk RVs that have been sitting there for 10 years, you know, or, you know, are they gonna just pull them up on the pad? I would say probably not. But, you know, junk vehicles will still be an issue, probably not as much. You know, but still be an issue. And, neighbors, you know, will still probably call about junk vehicles even if they're on an impervious surface. What's considered junk vehicle? I think, you know, we have some of that in code, but anyway.
We do, in section 304, yes we do.
So, but I did like, the fact that it wasn't super specific and hard to read, just easy to understand. I had a gentleman call me last week, and he said, I park a car in my backyard now on grass, so what does that mean? I can't park? And I said, no, you can park, here's what you need to do. He goes, oh, well, all right, okay, I understand. So,
Some people just don't have the money if you want to get down to it. They don't have the
I
money
don't
to pay
understand.
that and
Those
that.
cars then,
I
should
don't
they?
understand
So
how
why
a
can't we
person
just-
can maintain those vehicles.
Right.
Who, you know, I'm not gonna ask
Yeah, I
somebody
didn't have
how
the
they
money to
live.
replace my approach when the city marked it.
You know, I'm not
and it
gonna
had
ask
to be
somebody
done.
how they live and how can you afford
There were
this
no
and this, but you
assistance.
can't afford to put this in there. So, okay.
Well, it's no different than asking them to properly maintain the front of their house. It affects the neighbors. It affects their property value, the neighbor's
I would tell
property
you,
value.
I wouldn't want anybody coming in my backyard.
Well, nobody's
It's
going
not-
in
So-
to anybody's
I don't know why
backyard.
you're
Don't.
fixated
I
on
don't know
somebody
why
coming
you're
in your
saying
backyard.
that, because nobody's done that.
Right, they haven't, because I ain't given them no reason to.
I mean, but the
But even
point
if
is,
you did, they
none,
have the right to
nobody's gone into anybody's backyard.
Right, okay.
That's not the purpose of the legislation.
So, you know, maybe we can tweak this legislation, get rid of 3, let them put it on gravel, stone.
You're gonna have the same issue.
Okay, so we're gonna penalize these people, our constituents, our friends, and our neighbors that have junk, which I agree that should be taken care of, with my neighbor that has a boat, a trailer, and whatever, and they take real good care of their yard.
Are we,
I understand.
are
Okay,
we penalizing
It's a hard,
people?
it's a hard
Let me ask
situation.
you something, Wes. When somebody has a home and it needs to be painted, or there are gutters falling off, and they get cited, and then they don't do anything, and so we cite them, do you think that's penalizing them?
I believe that you have to have code enforcement. I'm a firm believer in that. I know people that have got cited for having trees growing out of their gutters, which kind of surprised me a few years ago. I made my first actual walking Sunday with my daughter Isabella into Target. And I had 2 people approach me and they were against it. And then I saw another person that my daughter used to dance with and her mom was in there. So I started talking to her and she had no idea what was going on. But then she told me, you know, but I did get a letter because we had a tree branch out on the curb and they got a letter for it. So, I don't know, I just think there's a better way to do it, Mayor, and I don't know how to do it, so.
In 2 years, well, you said yourself, in 2 years, it hasn't
Y'all were my
improved.
feelings, so.
So at the end of the day, I mean, we have to do something, otherwise, I don't think we're being fair to all the other constituents that we represent, because we represent all of them.
I know we do. I know we do. I've been on council long enough, and I get out myself.
Okay.
So,
All right, so looks like we've gone about as far as we can on that one.
all right, yeah.
Yeah, if you want, yeah. Ordinance 3, 2020, the limitation